My name is Andrew Ahn, and I'm a Korean-American filmmaker born and raised in Los Angeles. In 2010, 2011, I was getting ready to make my thesis film from CalArts, where I was going to grad school, and I was thinking a lot about this concept of family, and as a gay Korean-American man, what that would mean. I think it's very easy in some ways for members of the LGBTQ, Asian American, Korean American community to separate their sexuality from their culture. And as I was getting older, I realized that that separation couldn't always exist, because if I wanted to have a family and I wanted to have a child, that I would want this child to have a relationship to my parents. And so then, I would have to kind of merge my gay identity with my Korean identity. And that also meant coming out to my parents. And so I decided to make this film, 돌 First Birthday, as a way to communicate this to them. The kind of crazy thing that I did was that I cast my parents in the film without telling them what it was about, and then showed them the film to come out to them. And it was kind of a silly decision. It wasn't totally thought out, but I think that was the only way that I could do it at the time. I think about coming out as a little bit of a, it's a selfish thing, but I mean that in the best possible way, because, it's for yourself. And I think that that's so important that, members of the LGBTQ community, and especially people of color, you have to put aside sometimes what your family might want for you, or what you think your family wants, and you just have to know what you want. And so, coming out to my parents through the film, it was my way, and I don't judge the past me, but I do think that was really hard on me, and it was difficult on my parents. I showed my parents the film, and they were at first a little confused. They didn't know why I had made this film. They didn't get that I was coming out to them. And so I actually had to say the words, "I'm gay," which is the thing that I didn't want to do. I wasn't prepared to do. But we had a long conversation, and that was actually the kind of best thing, was that we had a conversation. I had a bag packed because I was afraid they were going to kick me out of the house, and instead we talked about it. And even though they didn't immediately march in a gay pride parade, they were so open, and they were willing to talk about it. I think for me, as a gay Korean American, my biggest fear was that in some ways, being gay was going to make me lose touch with my parents, was going to make me less Korean. And I think that's because, as a Korean American person, so much of my Korean identity is wrapped up in my family. My day-to-day existence is actually very American. The school I go to, the culture I consume, my citizenship, it's all American. And so my one connection to Korea is my family. And so if I, as a gay man, can't have a family the way that my brother has a family, the way that my dad had a family, does that make me less Korean? If I don't have a Korean child that has a 돌잔치, how does what is my relationship to my Korean identity then? I think many Korean American people have these barriers within themselves. I think we all balance different identities, whether it's, that we're queer or that we're adopted or that, we are trans. Like there's just so many different identities that we all balance. And I think that's something that I think a lot of Korean people are very good at doing, that we kind of break ourselves in pieces and we can exist in these different ways in different spaces. But I think that it's really important. I think that, as at least as I've grown up, I've wanted to kind of put these pieces together and I've wanted to feel whole. And so a lot of that means kind of being okay with conflict, being okay with things that might not always make sense, but realizing that because it's my existence, because it's my my life, that these different identities can coexist. And so I really hope that members of the Korean American community, one, recognize the different identities, but then also two, celebrate them. I don't think coming out is an event or a moment or a day. It's a life, and I think that, with my parents, it's been a slow but steady journey. And so my family, as kind of progressive as I thought they were, that there are still these ideas and notions that they held that went back to stereotypes of gay people. And I think that's just because that's all they knew, I remember my dad saying to me, that night when I showed them the movie and came out to them, my dad said to me, he's like, "Oh, there are no gay people in Korea," and for him it was such an American concept. One of the big moments in our relationship is actually when I introduced them to, a boyfriend of mine at the time. And my parents were super nervous and we were at a Korean barbecue and my mom kind of looked like she was about to cry. But, my boyfriend at the time started talking about himself and about, how he grew up and my mom, and my father, they just started to see him as a human being. And I think that was really huge because suddenly my sexuality wasn't this mysterious, unknown thing. It was, it was a human being, it was a person that, I loved and loved me. And I think that really kind of broke a lot of barriers down. There's still moments that my parents have where I'm a little bit like, oh, I wish you understood better. But, again, like I said, it's a process. It takes time. And I think the patience and compassion that I want them to have is the same patience and compassion that I have to give them. To think of my parents, not just as my parents, but as human beings, and I think that that's a realization that kind of comes with growing up. When I made Dol, and then when I made my feature Spanai, it was research and it was talking to my parents. It was getting to know them in a way that would allow me to represent them on screen in a way that felt authentic and respectful. And in that process, finding out about their hopes and dreams and their expectations of coming to the US, it was really wonderful for me that, the creative process was also really personally fulfilling, that there was a lot of growth, not just as a filmmaker, but also as a son, as a Korean American person.
못 지난다니까. 다 씻고 다 먹고 정말 잘한다 잘해. 아이고. 데이빗, 냉장고에 사과 깎아놨다.
오케이 엄마.
엄마 먼저 들어와서 잘게.
굿나잇.
I mean, I think there's a universality to the struggle of growing up, of balancing identities, of having, a desire to live your own life, but at the same time, respect and understand your parents, and so. As specific as Spa Night might be, I think that a lot of people can connect to it, whether it's because they're queer or because they're an only child or because their family has struggled financially or because they have immigrant parents. It's really it's a story about a person, and for me, I'm just like, I think that's the great thing about film is that we can connect to these people despite the fact that they might live in a completely different place with a completely different set of social and cultural rules and traditions. But I think that's the exciting thing about art and about film. And I hope that members of the LGBTQ community can see a film like Spa Night and be like, oh, like it's not just white people, and that people within the Korean American community can see Spa Night and be like, oh, like we're not all straight, and for a general audience to just be like, oh wow, like there is this, community of people. Like I think that's, I think that's huge for us to just kind of gain a greater understanding of humanity.